These three albums changed the way that I will listen to music and think about everything I ever do for the rest of my life. Let's talk about it. I do want to preface this. If you're looking for like motivation to like get up out of bed, like these are not going to be the albums for you. These are albums that I resonate kind of with low points of my life that maybe I wouldn't even say help me get out of, but help me understand why I'm there. And I found myself connecting with these albums. Right, I almost became them. Every lyric was me. I lived vicariously through the lyrics in these songs. I do not recommend this for the albums that I'm about to list. It's just the way that I experienced them at the time, and it was unreal. Enough yapping, right? Let's get into the first album. First album I'm going to talk about is an album called I Didn't Mean to Haunt You by Quadeco. If you know me, you knew this was coming, right? This is my favorite album of all time. Maybe I would argue the best album of all time. Now, I might be the only one ever on earth to argue that. But this album is meant to be from the perspective of someone who has just committed suicide, right? And they are doing their absolute best to haunt their mom, right? Or just their family in general. It's a little bit insane. It's a really, really incredible experience. It's one of those albums that if I could listen to it for the first time again, I would do it. Like that, it would be like my number one choice. Now, in what way did I resonate with this album? Well, at the time, I was unable to communicate with somebody that I really wanted to communicate with. They were being dry with me, it was not working. Nothing I was doing was going to get their attention. Similar to the topics on this album. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole concept. You should probably listen for yourself, right? But the topics on this album, he's doing his absolute best as a ghost to communicate with his mother. He's doing absolutely everything he can. And I resonated with that. And for a while, I was living as if I was a ghost. And there was no point in me communicating with anybody if I couldn't communicate to the one person that I wanted to. So, this was a really unhealthy point in my life mentally, and I'm not there anymore, but oh my God, was this such an incredible experience for like months. I would listen to this album every single day. There was nothing else that I would do. I was living through these lyrics. I was sorry for dying. Like, let me get into some of them. I put a few of the lyrics on screen here, but what I really forgot to mention was this album is full of regret. Like I had mentioned, this is from the perspective of somebody that just committed suicide. And now that they can't talk to their mother in this case, they regret it. Like, they regret committing suicide. It's mentioned many times lyrically. He says, I'll be free if I just save the date. Stuff like that. Again, I really recommend you listen to this album if you're in the right headspace for it. Do not, well, I mean, I guess you can. I can't stop you, but I wouldn't recommend listening to it the way that I did, right? I would say, all in all, what this album had taught me and what I was experiencing is like trying to get out of this, oh, how could you live without me type of mindset. That is what this whole album is about. Like, how could you possibly live your life when I'm not in it? It's very toxic. Obviously, it's a little bit different from the album perspective. Like, you're dead and you can't communicate, but when you're actually feeling this way in real life, it can be really non-beneficial for everybody involved. So that was my kind of lesson learned with this album. I still resonated with it so much. Thankfully it doesn't really take me back to that time. I just love the art so much. There's so much good production going on, and just everything about this album is incredible. Okay, I'm gonna get on to the next one. The next album I want to touch on is Dawn by Mount Eerie. Now, if you remember what I just said about the last album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, what I recently had just finished off saying, I was saying basically that album is, oh, how could you live without me? This is messed up. Like, there's no way you live without me. This, Dawn, is like the complete flip side of that album. It is, how am I going to live my life without you? How am I going to take steps to better myself, yet still constantly be grieving? It's honestly such an incredible experience, and I love both of them so much for like that exact reason, is that I can kind of, in a way, like coincide them. I don't know if that's the right word, but I kind of in a way like relate them together because they are such polar opposite but the same in many ways. It's really beautiful. Another thing about this album that doesn't relate but still does to I Didn't Mean to Haunt You is the production. The idea that there's literally none, right? It's like so raw the whole time. It's essentially just Phil and like some guitar. And Phil does a really, really good job. I mean, Phil is not a guy to, at least in this project, not a guy to challenge you lyrically. He's telling you exactly what he's feeling, right? He's describing people as ghosts, people from his past lives that he no longer wants to speak to, right? The album really takes you on a really slow yet like haunting journey. Like you are with him so alone in this like super like narrow-minded, like this is the only thing that's happening to me. There's nothing else in the world besides the fact that I'm moving on to a new, better life. Just right now, it's really hard. Now, like I said, this album lyrically, incredibly straightforward with you. I mean, it's so raw. It's so in your face, but so quiet at the same time. I don't even know how to describe this album. It's just beautiful. But I want to talk about this lyric specifically. When I left home, when I lived as if I died. That resonates with me personally. Like, having discovered this album this year, thinking about me 2 years ago when I Didn't Mean to Haunt You came out, when I was living as if I had died. Like, oh my god, I literally shed so many tears when I heard that the first time. I mean, it's just gorgeous, man. This whole album is just gorgeous for me. But yeah, leave a comment on this video what you want to see next from me. This was kind of my first idea. I've got a couple left. We'll see where I go from there. I love you. Take care. Let me cook.